2023 marks 30 years since the Gabon disaster. This is one of the main names here in Nyumba Yanga. It pretty much cuts Nyumba Yanga in half, and it goes from northeast, west to east. Yeah, it pretty much cuts. And of course, what else can you say about this great man? Arguably Zambia's best football player of all time. He was capped 108 times, scored 79 goals for Zambia. There's still that, I don't want to call it a controversy, 107 goals that he scored in one season, or is it one calendar year? Of course, some information couldn't be verified, so he wasn't able to receive that accolade from FIFA, even though they did give him a recognition for that. He was born in Luansha, Kumikomfa. That's where he started his amateur football, and what sort of like held his professional career was his temperament. Everybody says in his early days he was just too temperamental. He was arguing with the coaches, he was arguing with his fellow players, he was arguing with the opponents. So everybody must, I think those of you who know him knew that he was always very forceful, arguing with referees. In fact, one time he was sent off by Arthur Davis. Was given a red card and he refused to leave the pitch. He even gave him a false name to say, this is my name. So that is Godfrey Ukastal, 5 times footballer of the year. And I guess you can say the only people who could take him on board was Abena Butch, the Butch boys, because of his temperament. So that's where he ended up playing. And pretty much as he was growing, in his professional career, his temperament was also being managed. And it didn't take long before Cabo Warriors spotted him and paying a record fee at the time for his services. So he crossed over to Cabo Warriors. I guess the rest, as you can say from there, is history. We all know what he managed to achieve on a personal level, and of course for the national team. That game at the Moscow Olympics in 1980 against the Soviet Union of all teams, he scored that one goal. Zambia went down 3-1. So the name Yuka Chitalu, Energizer batteries, those are the leading batteries with the Energizer bunnies. Back in the day it was Union Carbide batteries, Yuka. And every time Dennis Liwell was commenting on radio,
here comes Godfrey Chitalu now, launching an attack inside Mufulira Wantla zone area.
It was match cooperation of Zambia. They even had his image on the matchbox. He did receive the Order of Distinction from KK, I think that was in 1981. He was on the technical bench at the Seoul Olympics in 1988 when Zambia had those heroics. Of course, a year or two after that, Zumu Njovu, who was the coach then, was relieved of his duties, and in stepped Godfrey Ukasitalu to take over the reins, and he was assisted by one Alex Chola. When he moved to Kitwe with the Butch Boys, he scored on his debut, and interestingly it was a game against Rokana then, which is Nkana as we know them today. Kitwe United made him their captain in 1969, and what is interesting is just before he made his move to Cabo Warriors a year later, there had been a reported offer from Cardiff City. So when he moved to Cabo Warriors, there was a Zambian record fee at the time of 3,500. There was actually an initial offer of 15,000, which was deemed to be too much, and it had to take the courts to reduce that fee to 3,500. Yeah. So despite retiring from active soccer in 1981, Godfrey Ukasitalu is still 8th. Still holds the record as the 8th highest scorer internationally with 79 goals. He ties that, by the way, with one Lewandowski. So on top of that group is people who have been very active today. Is one Cristiano Ronaldo with 123 goals. Second on that list is Ali Daei, Iranian, with 109 goals. And third is one Lionel Messi. He had all these exploits with 103 goals. And Godfrey Chitalu is actually ahead of the great Pele, who sits all the way down 11. So Godfrey Chitalu started playing soccer at age 10. Quite befitting that one of the main streets here in Nyumba Yanga is named after one Alex Chola. Call him what you want, master dribbler, computer, Leo Messi. I mean, he's everything. He arguably was one of Zambia's greatest midfielders. He was capped 100 times and scored 43 goals for the national team. An interesting start to his career. Alex was actually born, Alexander is actually his real name. He was born in the then Zaire, which is now DRC. His father had gone to work there. And by the time he was a teenager, he was already playing for one of the local clubs there, FC Sobena. yeah. So he trekked back to Zambia, and from Ndola he found his way back to the then Division 2 Mufulira Blackpool. So that's where he started his pretty much like his career, and he played alongside the likes of Simon Kaush Kaodi and all those big guns. So here's the interesting, he was named as Blackpool skipper when he was only 19 years in 1974, and this didn't go down with, you know, some of the senior players. You know how it is at Takamwaiche, how do you make him the skipper? But of course his skills spoke for themselves. So it wasn't long before all the big clubs came calling. In fact, Green Buffaloes, he turned them down because he said he wanted to remain a civilian. He didn't want to join Green Buffalo. So he also turned down a move to Mufulira Wanderers because he said the rivalry between the two clubs was so big that he didn't want to, you know, further exacerbate them by joining the rivals. So in 1976, Alex was named Zambian Footballer of the Year. He actually inspired a very young Kalusha Walia during his time when he was at John Nyumba Yanga Stadium, which is the home of Mufulira Blackpool. As was common back in the day, in the middle of the night, Alex Chola, together with his family, vanished from Mufulira. Of course, it wasn't long before they figured out that he had gone to join Power Dynamos. He had actually was given a job at CPC. You all remember Combelt Power Company, who were the sponsors of Power Dynamos. So Blackpool complained to Faz, and Chola was given a year's ban against playing international soccer. In 1984, Alex helped Power Dynamos to their first league championship, beating who else? Mufulira Wanderers 4-1 at Arthur Davis Stadium. I remember I watched that match. So again, he was first capped for the then Zambia B way back in 1974. His full debut for the Zambia national team came against Malawi a year later. He was also in that Zambia team that lost 3-1 to the Soviet Union at the 1980 Moscow Olympics. In 2006, CAF actually named him as one of the best ever football players in Africa. And we just met a millennial here, you know, who lives just on that house. You know, asked if they knew who Kelvin Mutale was, and they said no, which is quite sad if you ask me. But so here's the thing, who can forget Kelvin Malaza Mutale? He was actually born in Kadurushi. There's another Copperbelt product, and trekked to Kafue, where he started his career with nitrogen chemicals of Zambia. They did have, remember that time KTZ, Kafue Textiles had a team, nitrogen chemicals had a team. So here's the interesting thing, both Nkana Red Devils and Mighty Mufulira Wanderers had been quoting Kelvin Mutale for a while, and so this is how the story went. And I remember at the time I asked Mr. Jab Zulu, because I was quite close to him, and I asked him, and he said, look, he could neither deny nor confirm. So this is what happened. Wanderers went to Kafue and they took him. On their way to Mufulira, they decided to stop over at Edinburgh Hotel. Edinburgh. So I'm not sure, maybe they stopped to pop some champagne and celebrate, because he was a big catch. So whilst all that was happening, Nkana officials came to Edinburgh Hotel and took Kelvin Mutale, snatched him right out of Wanderers' hands, and that's how he became an Nkana player. Who can forget Kelvin Mutale? I remember heartbreak, that cup final against Mighty Mufulira Wanderers. Mighty were leading 2-0 at halftime. In came Kelvin Mutale as a substitute. Within 10-15 minutes, it was 2-0. He had scored a brace. Wanderers ended up losing that game 3-2. So in fact, by 1992, Kelvin was one of the assistant coaches for Nkana Red Devils. So his last game was actually against Mauritius, where he scored a hat-trick. And that was, you know, before coming for a stopover in Zambia on the way to Senegal. Yeah, so Kelvin Mutale was a young talent that went too soon. He had only been capped 10 times. Of course, this next one here is a no-brainer. He had that devastating partnership with Eston Mulenga at the 1992 AFCON finals. The duo were actually named in the team of the tournament. Robert Watiakeni, Robocop, no nonsense Vakamba, he broke no nonsense, no justice. He was born Chikola in Chingola, of course playing his amateur and early career there before Power Dynamos nipped him. Interestingly, he managed to slowly start nudging out the big Samuel Chomba, you know, from the national team. He was critical in Power's success in the early 90s, Power 90, when they beat BCC. lie in the first Mandela Cup, the only team, by the way, Zambian team to have won the Continental Cup back then. So Robert Wachakeni, like a few other Zambians, had signed for Dynamos in South Africa, and they actually hadn't left. I actually believe that Vincent Kompany is a reincarnation of Robert Wachakeni. We've just come from Kelvin Mutale Close, and this is Kelvin Mutale Street. So he's so good they decided to name him twice here in Nyumba Yanga, which can be quite confusing actually. In fact, in street naming nomenclature, you always make sure that you only have one name for the whole town of one person. So there's Kelvin Mutale Street and there's Kelvin Mutale Close, which is fine. I mean, he deserves it if you ask me. Arguably one of Africa's best defenders at the time. I have to say this before I proceed. Eat your heart out, Harry Maguire. Yeah, of course you guys know who we're talking about. One, they should have actually put Eston Mlenga next to Robert Wachakeni. That would have made more sense because these two were inseparable. Yeah. Eston Mlenga was actually born in Kitwe, so another Commonwealth product. Stop children. Nothing would go past him. So from Konkola Blades, he joined the Army side, Green Buffaloes FC, and there were rumors in terms of why he hadn't gone to play professional soccer, because at his peak he definitely could have played anywhere in the world. So others say, you know, because he was conscripted in the army, he couldn't be released. I know there were all these rumors, but we were all just wondering why he never played professional soccer. Yeah, so in 1990 he was actually voted Footballer of the Year. His nickname was King Yellowman, obviously, because of his light complexion. So if GBFC in Ghana did the unthinkable at the time. They managed to pry him away from Green Buffaloes Football Club. And here's the thing, at the 1992 Africa Cup of Nations, Tony Eboa, who was the top scorer in the Bundesliga, and Abedi Pele gave compliments to Eston Mlenga's defensive prowess. Said they'd never come across a defender like that. I remember Baefo Chabala telling us, after that 92 AFCON, you guys remember how the results went in, I think it was a quarterfinal, one of those games against Ghana, where Tony Eboa and the Bedi Pele did that 1-2. So they beat Robert Wachakeni and they beat Eston Mlenga. And I remember Baefo telling us that as soon as I saw that Eston Mlenga bamunyesha, I knew that the goal was going. So he did start his his youth soccer with the Rangers, in the Rangers youth ranks. That's where he cut his teeth. And Eston Mlenga had 34 caps. His signature was, he used to head away Amabola, and then he could clear with a bicycle kick. I mean, who does that? Like I said, eat your heart out, Harry Maguire. So, if you walk around Nyumba Yanga, you actually see that there are some other names. In Basera, Kennedy Chola was not part of the team that perished off the coast of Gabon. But I think what the authorities should do in Nyumba Yanga is put other signs, because there are a lot of streets this side that are off Godfrey Chitalu, and many people don't know about them. So I actually discovered this by accident, and Kennedy Chola, those of you who know, he broke Mufulira Wanderers' fans' hearts when he crossed over. At his peak, he crossed over to join Kana Red Devils, and he had that technique. He'd do that thing, and he did eventually leave Kana Red Devils, coming back for a shorter 3-year stint. He helped them win 2 titles. Then when he came back, disciplinary issues set in, and he was let go of, sadly. So that's the late Kennedy Chola. So something else, I think, it says Kennedy Chola Crescent. A crescent, there's Gift Kampamba Crescent this way, which actually goes around Mulebusha Crescent. This one is a close, it actually ends here, there's no throughway, so I don't know why they called it a crescent, just so it actually ends somewhere there. Okay, so here we've got John Soko and Timothy Muitwa Street. Here we're going to be talking about Timothy Muitwa, so we're going to go over here. Timothy Muitwa started his career with Kabwe Rangers, and he was picked by, of course, the legendary Godfrey Chitalu in 1986, who signed him for Kabwe Warriors. He was known as the teacher. Those of you who remember how he used to play at Ale Fundama defender, how to play football. He was arguably one of the best strikers for our generation at the time, and you could probably compare him with anyone out there. He was born Kuchitwe Chansofu, so he's a Kitwe person. Actually, he was born on the Copper Belt in Kitwe. So such was his confidence and his ability to win games that he always used to tell his fellow players, you know, when they won a game at Kafule Nini Miuinisha, and he was known for saying that at Nkana Red Devils. He did, Timothy did have a brief stint in Czechoslovakia with Sparta Praha. And then upon his return, there was a rumor of some deal for Raja Casablanca. It was rumored that he was supposed to join Raja Casablanca, but that deal fell through, and that's how he ended up joining Nkana Red Devils, which was just before the Gabon disaster. So Timothy Mwitwa won the league with Cabo Warriors under Godfrey Chitaru in 1987. So as I said, this is Gift Kampamba Crescent, so it goes round and it comes out there. There's some kids playing football there. So we're going to ask them what they know about these street names. Who lives here on Michael Mwape? Do you know who Michael Mwape was? That street there is Debbie Makinka. Do you know who Debbie Makinka was? Do you know who Debbie Makinka was? Oh, thank you very much. Give me a high five. Okay, remember the Gabon disaster? What happened there? You've forgotten. Wow, okay. This is 2023, okay? We're in 2023. 30 years, remember the plane that was carrying Zambian football players that was going for a World Cup qualifier? It crashed in the sea and all the players and officials died. You guys don't know that story? You know that story, yeah? So most of these streets here where you guys live are named after those players. Wow, Watiakeni. Yeah, Robert Watiakeni. See, he's got an idea, okay? So Robert Watiakeni as well. Good. So continue playing your football, guys. We'll leave you. Thank you very much. Okay. Michael Mwape was the FAS chairman. He was elected in 1992. He took over from David Piri. And one thing I can remember that he had introduced, because a lot of time when the players were in camp, before going out for an international game, no, nothing against Masiem Hotel. And I remember Michael Mwape brought in that thing of saying, no, they have to be starting from home. So they started camping and staying at the Intercon and the Pamozi. I remember those days, and that's what he brought. Even though there were some players, we're not going to mention their name, from Intercon. We're not going to mention their name, yeah. So this is Michael Mwape. He was the 8th FAS chairman. It was Wisdom Mumbachansa. Wisdom was capped 34 times for the national team. So like I said, he joined from town rivals Rokana United's youth team, and that was in 1980. Wisdom also had a stint in the USSR. This was after the 88 Olympics. A lot of the players went to play in the Soviet Union. I think there were 4 of them. He was one of them, and he played for Dushanbe. But it wasn't long, it was less than a season, and all of them pretty much came back. And at the time, in fact, before his demise, he had signed for Dynamos for South Africa, where he had actually traveled. And what is interesting was, he was actually visiting Zambia to collect his wife, you know, to go back to South Africa and play for Dynamos, whom he had signed for. And that's when he was told that, no, he had been brought back to the national team. When he returned from Russia, he came back to Power Dynamos. He captained the Power Dynamo side that beat BCC Lions, you know, to be the first Zambian team that won a Continental Cup. That was the Mandela Cup at the time. I remember watching that game at Arthur Davis. Of course, there was the so-called treble that Power Dynamos won in 1990, and that's where Power 90 came from, and Wisdom Chansa was the captain at the time. So the name Summerby, there was Mike Summerby, who used to play for Manchester City and who was capped 6 times for the England. He's the only other Summerby player out there. We all remember, you know, outside gate D, every time he touched the ball, it was whiz. Okay, so over here we have Debbie Mankinka Street. Again, as I was saying earlier on, a lot of these streets off Godfrey Chitalu Road are not known, so maybe the officials can do something by putting up another signpost at the entrance there. So Debbie Mankinka was born in Zimbabwe. He started his early football career with a team called Lima Football Club. That's where he started his playing history. He played for Profound Warriors. Profound Warriors, of course, as we all know today, NAPSA Stars. That partnership that he had with Charles Musonda was out of this world. In fact, I remember one game at Independence Stadium, 1988. I think it was against Ghana. The ref had to stop the game so that he could count the players again. The Ghanaians complained that there were too many of them because that partnership between Debbie McKinka and Charles Musonda just mesmerized and tore them to pieces. They didn't know. Atiba Fudisha. The 1988 Seoul Olympics, he scored 2 goals against Guatemala. Debbie McKinka was capped 98 times. So he played for Profound Warriors between 1984 and 1989. He also played in Poland. So he's also one of those players after that 1992 escapade had signed for El Ettifaq in Saudi Arabia, where he came from on his way to West Africa in Senegal. Debbie McKinka was capped 98 times for Zambia. I think there's not much to say about this person. It's actually quite interesting that there's Harrison Chongo and then Efo Chavala. I suspect someone who was naming these streets was a Mufulira Wanderers fan. Yeah, so Efo Chavala, of course, born and bred Mufulira Mwanashimaini. Started his career in Mufulira.
Everything will happen the way they do.
So he had his debut for Mufulira Wanderers against Lusaka Tigers in 1980, and by 1993, I mean, it was quite difficult for him to break into the Wanderers first team. As you know, Bernard Kabwe, who was the Wanderers goalkeeper, was also the Zambia goalkeeper at the time. So if Kansabacha, but I think his prowess, it was no surprise that within a short time he had taken over the mantle at Mufulira Wanderers. One of the most capped players. 115 caps for Zambia. He had his debut in 1983, all the way up until his, his passing on. Entire Africa knows Chabala, particularly in East and Central Africa. Every time Zambia used to play those East and Central Africa Challenge Cup, he was the hero. Then saving penalties. I remember he saved a penalty in Gabon. That's why the Gabonese remembered him very well, because that was live on TV when he saved a penalty in Gabon. There's a reason why I'm leaning against this post. When Wanderers were defending a corner, this is how he used to stand. That was the level of his confidence. And sometimes he just raised one arm in there to pluck a ball. Those high balls that come from the corner. He just pick one hand. It's a bit arrogant if you ask me, but that was the effort, Chavala. We all remember his exploits at the 1992 Africa Cup of Nations. Again, he received a lot of plaudits from Tony Eboa. Us who knew him, every time after a game or an international game, when they were back at Wanderers, he'd always walk around and talk to the players. And I remember him saying one time, and it's true actually, when people say, what was the secret? And he'd say to himself, that's what he was known for. So here's the other thing about Efo Chavala. He struggled with night blindness, so every time Zambia played under floodlights, he gave over the mantle to his 2IC, which was Richard Mwanza from Kabwe Warriors. So Efo Chavala was Zambia's Sportsman of the Year in 1985 and 1988. He's arguably Zambia's best goalkeeper in our generation. So Chavala did have a stint. He had a stint in Argentina, but he only played for 1 year. He was playing for Argentinos Juniors in 1991, and then he said he wasn't happy with the contract, so he came back to settle at Mufulira Wanderers. When you spoke to strikers, you spoke to any striker back in the day, they said what they feared about him, because if you're coming at Ngabatenkana Fesova Efo, you'd make a mistake and shoot the ball over the bar. Now, okay, so it's good. What they did was they put all the crew, so all the street names are in one area. Of course, we remember he featured a lot during that time. He was always being mentioned. Colonel Fenton Mahoney, he was the pilot. And he had 2 co-pilots with him. You can find all their names here in the streets. There was Lieutenant Colonel Victor Mulenga. He was one of the co-pilots. And there was Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Sachika. You can also find his name here. And then there was Corporal Thompson Sakala. Thompson Sakala, so he was the steward on the flight. And then the physicians, there was Wilson Mutonga, he was the physician, Dr. Wilson Mutonga. There was also Wilson Sakala. So basically this area has the crew. So all the names around this part of Nyumba Yanga are from the crew, the physicians, journalists as well. So this is one of those street names, you know, Michael Norgroves. It was quite interesting to know who is this Michael Norgrove. So this is a crescent, so it does go around. Crescent. So Michael Norgroves, interesting, his father was a British expatriate who worked for Zambia Railways in the 80s. So Michael Norgroves was born here in Zambia, Kukabwe Kamkuba, and he later turned, when the parents went back to the UK, he started professional boxing. He turned pro in 2010, and sadly during one of his professional fights, he had 6 fights, 5 wins, 1 draw. In 2013, during one of his professional fights, he was knocked out, and you know, a few days after that in hospital, he died. And this brought a lot of discussions in terms of the safety of boxing. Even today in the UK, when you mention Michael Norgroves, people talk about, you know, all this research that they're doing on you know, how boxing is to the human body. So those of you who didn't know, yeah, Michael Norgroves, there you go. So here's another interesting street, Reginald Holmes Street. Okay, Reginald Dean Holmes was actually Lusaka councillor pre-independence, and so both his parents and Reginald Holmes are still here in Lusaka, and I'm going to show you where they are. And here we are. Okay, so I'm approaching the graves. So it seems all the homes are buried here, but of course the most important one is this one. Okay, so I said Eleanor Victoria Holmes, Gordon Wentworth Holmes were the parents, and then Reginald Dean Holmes. So Reginald Dean Holmes passed away in 1993 and is buried here together with his parents. So this is where our councillor is. I wonder if he sold any plots. So here's another one, Nyumba. He was not part of the Gabon team. Paul Chela, we all know, used to play for Mufulira Wanderers. He was discovered from Kafironda Explosives, Kafironda United. Yeah, Kafironda Explosives had a team, Kafironda United. That's where he was discovered. It took a while for him to break into the national team. He was always in the shadows of one Kenneth Babo Maritore. So it was fine for George Mungwa who gave him his chance. Remember those Kosafa games we used to watch on TV? And he came and he proved his worth. Everybody used to say, no, he's not good enough. And he was actually top scorer finally in 1995. He did eventually leave Mufulira Wanderers for Green Buffaloes, where after his playing career he was a driver. And sadly, Paul Chela passed on in 2016 while still working as a driver for the army side.